Now, close your eyes and let's travel back in time to a distant land, to the heart of the Roman Empire. Picture Rome, where golden domes shine and marble columns soar into the sky. The streets of that glorious capital ring with imperial banners and the echoing footsteps of soldiers' metal armor. But Rome is not only a land of power, armies, or conquest, but also of wisdom and reflection. This is the story of a man who sat on the Roman throne, a leader who ruled with his pen as much as his sword, Marcus Aurelius. This man who shaped the course of history was no ordinary emperor. He sat on the throne during one of Rome's most turbulent periods, but what set him apart was not his command of armies, but his deep thoughts that transformed his soul into a philosopher sage. Known as the Philosopher King, Marcus Aurelius was an emperor who was devoted to Stoic philosophy and made justice and virtue the pillars of his rule. Even when the empire was on the brink of collapse, he steered Rome's turbulent seas with patience, wisdom, and wisdom. Ah, dear listeners, the story of Marcus Aurelius is not only the story of a ruler, but also of a journey into the depths of the human soul. Even as he sat on the throne of Rome, he reflected on the mortality of life and questioned himself in his immortal meditations. For him, it was more than conquering empires, it was about understanding man and the universe. Here we embark on a journey into the life, thoughts, and legacy of this great man. The splendor of Rome and the deeply wise spirit of Marcus Aurelius are with you today. Get ready, because this journey is no ordinary history lesson, it is an epic story of philosophy and leadership, from the battlefields to the lines of wisdom. Ah, my dear friends, to dive deeper into the world where Marcus Aurelius grew up, we need to go back a bit further to his roots in youth. This is the story of a boy raised in the grand imperial palaces of Rome, in the bright yet challenging world of the aristocracy. He was fortunate enough to become an emperor, but he was also born with the heavy burden of that responsibility. Marcus belonged to one of Rome's most distinguished families and was the grandson of some of the most important statesmen of his time. Even as a young child, his wise eyes observed the world around him with great curiosity. During the days he ran around the palace walls, he felt the immense power of Rome, but also tried to understand the mysteries behind that power. However, Marcus's true journey lay beyond wealth and power. It was in the pursuit of wisdom. At a young age, he studied under some of the most esteemed teachers of his time. Subjects like philosophy, law, and rhetoric, which were the heart of Rome, took a significant place in his mind. But perhaps the most impactful was the quiet yet profound voice of Stoic philosophy. Stoicism marked a turning point in Marcus's life. Even at a young age, he began to discover the tranquility and inner strength that this philosophy could bring. So even before he reached the throne, he was seeking the meaning of life beyond power and authority. He would sit under the stars for nights on end, contemplating the workings of this vast world. To him, being an emperor was about something much deeper, understanding the weight of being human, the balance of nature, and our place in the universe. Fate would carry him to the pinnacle of Rome, but the way he embraced that fate set him apart from being just another emperor. He shaped his mind and spirit with wisdom. That's why he holds a place in Roman history, not only as a leader but also as a philosopher. Thus, Marcus's youth laid the foundation for this quest. Each teacher he learned from taught him not just about the affairs of the empire, but also about the inner world of humanity. And my friends, know that the path to the throne of Rome was not just filled with war and politics. It was also a deep journey filled with a silent search for wisdom. Ah, my dear friends, now I'm going to tell you about the momentous occasion of Marcus Aurelius ascending to the throne and the transformation it brought to this Roman. It's a moment where we witness the birth of a powerful emperor and encounter perhaps a rare event in Rome's unique history: two emperors, two souls, one throne. Marcus Aurelius had not yet completed his quest for wisdom at a young age, but this pursuit had elevated him to the highest ranks of Rome. The winds of fate were pushing him towards becoming the ruler of Rome. However, Marcus's ascension was unlike the typical reign of a single emperor. You see, my dear friends, he didn't rule alone. He shared the throne with another man named Lucius Verus, and together they governed the magnificent Rome of their time. This was one of the rare periods in Roman history where two emperors ruled together, and this joint rule would have a significant impact on both Rome's internal and external policies. Now close your eyes for a moment and imagine those glorious days of Rome. On one side, there's the wise and deeply thoughtful Marcus Aurelius, and on the other, the more military and energetic Lucius Verus. These two leaders complemented each other, yet they had very different personalities. While Marcus Aurelius' philosophical depth and calm leadership maintained peace within Rome, Lucius Verus's military bravery and dynamism aimed to strengthen Rome's power outside its borders. Their ascension wasn't easy. Rising to the throne in Rome was fraught with challenges, political games, and intrigue. They needed to win the support of the Roman Senate, keep the army on their side, and gain the trust of the people. At this point, Marcus Aurelius' wise determination and Verus's strategic intelligence came into play. By working together, they charted a common path to defend Rome's vast borders. However, it's important to remember that both emperors specialized in different areas. While Marcus focused more on internal affairs, Verus was leading the army in battles at the front. This joint rule brought stability to Rome. The balance between the two leaders upheld a massive empire. Lucius Verus showcased Rome's strength in wars against the Persians, while Marcus Aurelius illuminated the Rome with philosophy and thought. Thus, Rome experienced a period marked by military victories, while also gaining new meaning through Marcus's profound philosophical ideas. But my dear friends, as beneficial as the joint rule of these two emperors was for Rome, there was always competition, jealousy, and power struggles lurking in the background. The throne of Rome was always fraught with dangers, and how long could this partnership between two powerful men last? These questions echoed in the minds of the Roman people over time. Still, for a while, balance was achieved in Rome, and this balance strengthened the empire's resilience against great storms. Marcus Aurelius and Lucius Verus left their mark on the history of Rome with their distinct characters. The partnership between these two emperors symbolized the preservation of both internal and external balances of Rome, while also marking the beginning of a significant philosophical revolution. However, with the whims of fate, how long could this partnership last? You'll find the answer to that question in my next story. My dear friends. Now I want to take you deep into the mind of Marcus Aurelius, to the philosophical thoughts that shaped his spirit. These thoughts reveal how he led the Roman Empire not just with sword and shield, but also with wisdom and inner peace. Marcus Aurelius wasn't just an emperor, he was a philosopher king, and his approach to leadership was unique for his time. So let's dive into his deep connection with Stoicism. Stoicism was the philosophical school that shaped Marcus's soul. At its core, this philosophy teaches that one shouldn't resist fate, that we should accept the challenges life throws at us with calmness, and that we should develop ourselves through reason and virtue. And Marcus Aurelius didn't just keep these teachings in theory, he applied them to every moment of his life, his imperial duties, wars, the Roman people, and even his personal sufferings. How could he maintain inner peace while managing a vast empire? The answer to this question lies in the deep principles of Stoicism. Now, think about this, dear friends. During a chaotic time in Rome, with revolts at the borders and turmoil within, Marcus Aurelius must have had an incredibly strong mindset. As a Stoic leader, he understood that everything is temporary, and that the events in the outside world depend on how much space they take up in his mind. Don't worry about things you can't control, he would tell himself. For an emperor, that was an incredible mental strength. Even when dealing with destruction, famines, and revolts in wars, a tranquil river flowed within Marcus. This philosophical approach was directly reflected in his leadership style. As the Emperor of Rome, Marcus Aurelius treated his people with justice, patience, and compassion. According to Stoic teachings, virtue was the highest good, and Marcus sought ways to be a virtuous leader. For him, it wasn't just about military successes, it was also about elevating the spirit of Rome. He was in pursuit of virtue, not power, approaching his people not as an emperor, but as a sage. But my dear friends, Marcus Aurelius' Stoicism was significant not only in his approach to his people, but also in how he treated himself. He lived a life filled with personal challenges. Since the moment he ascended to the throne, he battled constant illnesses, wars, and tragedies. He lost his own children and faced betrayals from friends. Yet despite all these hardships, Stoic teachings enabled him to confront life's challenges with tranquility. "Fate is beyond my control," he said. "But how I respond is entirely up to me." While writing his greatest work, Meditations, he poured these thoughts onto paper. This work is not just a collection of an emperor's daily thoughts, but a mirror of a Stoic's inner world. In these notes he wrote for himself, he explained how one should accept their own fate, and that external chaos should not disturb inner peace. That's why Marcus Aurelius is known not only as the Emperor of Rome, but as the Philosopher King of all humanity. His thoughts continue to influence people for centuries. Now, dear friends, think about this. What would an empire governed by such a philosophy be like? If a leader can remain calm amidst all challenges and govern his people in the most virtuous way, wouldn't that leader's kingdom also embody that same virtue? Marcus Aurelius' Stoicism brought not just military strength to Rome, but also spiritual strength. Under this wise leader's governance, the empire found balance both externally and internally. However, friends, Marcus Aurelius' philosophical approach didn't always make things easy for him. At times, he had to make great sacrifices to maintain this balance. In his profound world of thoughts, one of his biggest struggles was dealing with the harsh realities of the outside world. Even in the calm sea of Stoic thought, storms would sometimes arise. And so, while the philosophical depths of Marcus Aurelius continued to shape the Roman Empire, we must delve deeper to understand what was happening in the inner world of this wise leader. My dear friends, now I'm going to take you to the toughest days of the Roman Empire and the heavy responsibilities that rested on the shoulders of Marcus Aurelius. This wise emperor is remembered not only for his philosophical depth, but also for his leadership on the battlefields. However, my friends, during Marcus's time, peace was unfortunately short-lived. Rome was shaken by a series of wars in both the east and the north. Let's first turn our eyes to the north of Rome, where the Germanic tribes came storming down from the depths of the forest. This land was never peaceful for Rome. At that time, the Germanic tribes were constantly pressuring the borders of Rome. Even though Marcus Aurelius, as a philosopher king, wasn't in favor of war, he had to ensure Rome's safety as an emperor. Thus, under his leadership, the Roman armies marched toward the northern borders. These wars would go down in history as the Marcomannic Wars. Dear friends, in these wars, Marcus Aurelius was not just a commander, he was also a leader who stood alongside his soldiers, facing harsh winter conditions, hunger, and diseases. As the Germanic tribes launched wave after wave of attacks on Rome's borders, Marcus stood tall at the front of his army. His strategic intelligence led the Roman armies to victory time and again. But the price of these wars was heavy. Struggles emerged not only on the battlefield but throughout Rome. Famine, plagues, and fatigue added to the burdens on Marcus Aurelius' shoulders. And it was during these tough times that he relied on Stoic philosophy to keep himself grounded. But was that enough? While trying to reign in the Germanic tribes in the north, there were the Parthians in the east. My friends, this was no easy fight either. The Parthians were one of Rome's oldest enemies. The Parthian Empire, ruling over what is now Iran, always drew Rome's attention. Marcus Aurelius found himself fighting on two fronts, both in the east and the west. This could have been a heavy burden for any leader, but Marcus did not shy away from defending Rome despite these challenges. The wars with the Parthians were just as tough as those with the Germanic tribes. The struggle for dominance over Armenia and Mesopotamia kept the conflict with the Parthians alive. The Parthians did everything they could to weaken Roman authority in these regions. However, Marcus Aurelius successfully directed his armies against this eastern threat. Even though he wasn't personally on the battlefield, the wars against the Parthians, led by Rome's loyal commander Lucius Verus, ended in Roman superiority. Now think about it, my friends. Marcus Aurelius was fighting on these two major fronts. As the Germanic tribes threatened the north and the Parthians posed a danger in the east, he still sought to maintain military and political balance with wise decisions. As a philosopher king, war went against his nature, but as an emperor, he had no choice but to protect his people and his empire. This dilemma caused great inner conflict for Marcus. Yet, like a Stoic sage, he always knew that hardships were temporary. Even amidst the dust and chaos of war, Marcus Aurelius always had one thing on his mind: to make Rome a better place. He didn't keep his philosophical thoughts to himself, even on the battlefield. He tried to instill the virtues of Stoicism in his soldiers, commanders, and the public. Perhaps that's why the Rome under his leadership became not only a military power but also a center of wisdom. The two great enemies Marcus faced left deep marks in the history of Rome. However, his determined leadership safeguarded Rome's borders and contributed to the long-term resilience of the empire. The Germanic tribes and the Parthians could never defeat Rome under Marcus's command. During his reign, Rome showcased to the world how philosophy and military genius could come together. Dear friends, now let's close our eyes and reflect. On one side, a philosopher emperor; on the other, brutal wars. How did these profound conflicts within Marcus Aurelius' spirit affect the fate of Rome? The answers to these questions lie within the struggles he faced both in his inner world and on the battlefields. And as we learn his story, we realize just how deep not only history is but also the human spirit. Dear friends, now I'm taking you to one of the toughest times in Rome, perhaps even the darkest period of the empire. Imagine endless wars on one side and struggles surrounding the empire on all fronts. But over these dark days fell another shadow: the plague. This was a pandemic so devastating that neither the swords of the Germanic tribes nor the arrows of the Parthians could leave Rome as helpless as this. This great disaster is known in history as the Antonine Plague. From the day Marcus Aurelius ascended to the throne, the wars hardly ever stopped, and this plague also deeply shook Rome. Starting in 165 AD, this epidemic was so widespread and destructive that it spread throughout the empire. The disease spread so quickly that neither the rich nor the poor could escape this catastrophe. People wandering the city streets soon began to feel death's cold breath on their necks. Every day, thousands succumbed to the plague and corpses piled up on the sidewalks. The plague ravaged nearly every corner of the empire. While Marcus Aurelius dealt with battles on the front lines, he also tried to cope with this disaster. Here, his true leadership shone through once again. Dear friends, just think about the heavy burden of being an emperor. While sitting on your throne and seeing the people look at you with trust, how hard must it be to witness thousands of people succumbing to illness before your very eyes? But Marcus Aurelius maintained his composure, as always thanks to his Stoic philosophy. To him, this was part of life, a reflection of the inevitable. However, this thought certainly didn't leave him inactive. Marcus did everything he could to combat the epidemic. He ordered the acceleration of medical aid and the distribution of doctors to the affected areas. At the same time, to alleviate the economic impact of the plague, he opened the treasury to the public. Yes, my friends, Marcus Aurelius was not just an emperor, he was a leader who put everything on the line for the welfare of his people. The treasury of Rome was draining so quickly during this period that Marcus eventually made his personal wealth part of this struggle. He was ready to do whatever it took to ease the suffering of his people. However, my friends, this plague affected not only the bodies but also the spirit of Rome. As people battled the disease, despair spread everywhere. The people of Rome began to believe that the plague was a curse from the gods. But it was right at this point that Marcus Aurelius emerged as a wise leader before them. He reminded them that both war and disease were only temporary, and with Stoic philosophy, he emphasized the need for humans to stand tall in the face of all kinds of difficulties. He was not only a commander but also a sage during this tough period. He knew how to uplift his people and restore their courage. But unfortunately, dear friends, this plague was so devastating that it even broke the spirits of Rome's soldiers. The armies weakened, and defensive lines along the borders began to crumble. On one hand, the Germanic tribes to the north, and on the other, the Parthians to the east tried to seize the opportunity to exploit Rome's weakness. Marcus Aurelius made great efforts to reorganize his armies during these difficult times. The plague had broken not just the people but also the resilience of the empire. However, as always, Marcus did not falter in the face of this challenge. He strove to strengthen both the interior and exterior of Rome. Ah, my friends, this plague lasted for years and ultimately claimed perhaps millions of lives. But Marcus Aurelius' leadership prevented Rome from completely collapsing under this horrific disaster. Although the borders of the empire had weakened, thanks to his wise and determined management, Rome managed to survive. The thoughts Marcus Aurelius wrote during this period were perhaps reflections of the great conflicts he faced within himself. On one hand, as a philosopher, he accepted the transience of the world, while on the other, as an emperor, he tried to take every possible measure to save his people. So, dear friends, the Antonine Plague was not just an epidemic in Rome's history, but also one of the most significant events that shaped Marcus Aurelius' character and leadership. Even while fighting against this disaster, he always exhibited the wise stance of a philosopher. Whether on the battlefields or in the plague-stricken streets of the empire, Marcus Aurelius' philosophical thoughts and leadership were enough to keep Rome standing. While the plague weakened the empire, it further strengthened Marcus' name and legacy. Ah, dear friends, what great wisdom and what a remarkable example of leadership that he remained steadfast even in these tough times. As we learn about his life and governance, we see how a person can stand strong and act with virtue even under the most difficult conditions. Ah, my dear friends, I want to take you into the inner world of Marcus Aurelius, showing you that he was not just an emperor but also a father and a husband. No matter how complicated the affairs of the state were, family always held an important place in Marcus Aurelius's life. Unfortunately, his family life was just as tumultuous and challenging as the Roman Empire itself. Marcus's wife, Faustina. Yes, my dear friends, Faustina was always by his side, trying to share the heavy burden on the emperor's shoulders. In this weary world of the emperor, perhaps the only place he found peace was in Faustina's affection. However, historians have differing opinions about Faustina's loyalty to Marcus Aurelius. Some describe her as a loving wife, while others claim she betrayed the emperor. What's certain, my friends, is that his relationship with Faustina occupied a significant place in Marcus Aurelius's inner world. They had 13 children together, but sadly, most of them died at a young age. Among these children, the most notable was undoubtedly Commodus. Ah, my friends, here lies perhaps the greatest dilemma for Marcus Aurelius' son, Commodus. Yes, Marcus Aurelius was a great leader, a wise emperor, but the challenges he faced while raising his children, like any parent, were daunting. Commodus was one of Marcus's favorite children. Would this young man, preparing to take the Roman throne, become a wise, calm, and virtuous ruler like his father? Unfortunately, Marcus Aurelius did not always find what he hoped for. Commodus was very different from his father. Marcus led a life deeply committed to philosophy, virtue, and discipline. But Commodus? Ah, my friends, Commodus had a very different spirit. In his youth, he was much more interested in entertainment, pleasure, and a flashy lifestyle. The Stoic values his father taught him might have seemed a bit dull in his eyes. Marcus Aurelius saw this. He realized his son was different and would take a completely different path. However, the Roman Empire needed an heir for its continuation, and unfortunately, that heir could only be Commodus. My friends, think for a moment. As an emperor, the person you hand over the throne to must be someone who can protect the entire empire and rule your people with justice. But Marcus Aurelius always had doubts about how well his son Commodus could bear this responsibility. Yet, it's not always possible to change the course of history. As a father, preparing Commodus as the heir to the throne was one of his greatest duties. This duty was perhaps the biggest contradiction that Marcus Aurelius carried within him, a philosopher leader forced to hand over the Roman Empire to a son who was drawn to pleasure. However, my dear friends, it was still uncertain how Commodus would govern Rome. Marcus Aurelius hoped he could eventually mature his son, teaching him that leadership wasn't just about power and show. But life doesn't always go as we plan. While Marcus Aurelius struggled with wars on the empire's borders, he had to watch his son grow up in the magnificent palaces of the capital. Commodus was slowly becoming a figure far removed from the emperor his father had envisioned. But why Commodus? Why not another heir? Marcus Aurelius could have chosen someone else besides his son, right? Here, my friends, the political realities of Rome come into play. No matter how virtuous and wise a leader Marcus Aurelius was, the Roman Empire was not a monarchy. Having a powerful family lineage at the helm of the empire was one of the most critical political elements of that era. Marcus Aurelius had to leave a legitimate heir of his blood. Both the people and the Senate wanted to see the continuation of the dynasty. Perhaps that's why Commodus was the most suitable choice. Here, we can once again return to Marcus Aurelius's Stoic philosophy. He knew how to accept what life brought, standing calmly in the face of uncontrollable events. Commodus was his blood, and he understood he couldn't change that reality. So he tried to educate his son, teaching him lessons about leadership. However, he also sensed deep down that Commodus wouldn't follow in his footsteps. My dear friends, the consequences of Marcus Aurelius's decision would later change the fate of the Roman Empire. With Commodus's ascension to the throne, the future of Rome would take a different path. However, at that time, while Marcus Aurelius was still alive, the Roman people were unaware of this situation. His son had yet to take the throne, and the greatest philosopher emperor of Rome continued to do his best for his people. In the end, my friends, Marcus Aurelius's family life was as complex as his reign. He bore all the responsibilities that an emperor should carry while also fighting great inner struggles as a father. Yet, despite everything, Marcus Aurelius always lived as a Stoic. He accepted and moved on. Dear friends, now let's embark on a journey to explore the greatest legacy that Marcus Aurelius left us, his immortal work, Meditations. Just think about it for a moment. Amidst the great wars, palace intrigues, and imperial affairs, Marcus Aurelius would retreat to a corner, pick up his pen, and write down the thoughts that emerged from the depths of his soul, not for a philosophy book, but rather as a reflection of his own inner self. And that's precisely what Meditations is. This book brings together Marcus Aurelius's daily reflections and personal notes. However, my friends, these notes are not just the ordinary journal of an emperor. No, they open a door to the mind of a philosopher who seeks to understand the world and yearns for inner peace. With every word, Marcus Aurelius presents us with the deepest principles of Stoicism. But dear friends, remember, these writings are not only for others, they are primarily for himself. These thoughts he penned to discipline his soul, to remind himself, and to live a virtuous life have continued to resonate in people's hearts for centuries. Imagine for a moment, even in the cold and tense moments when Rome was surrounded by enemies at night, Marcus Aurelius wrote down his thoughts like a philosopher. Meditations may have been an escape for him. After exhausting days on the battlefield, he dove into the depths of his mind to seek tranquility. Even while drowning in imperial affairs, he never forgot to remind himself the world is what it is. We can only control our reactions. But friends, meditations is not just an expression of one person's inner world, it is also a reflection of an emperor's spiritual struggles in the complex world of the Roman Empire. As a Stoic sage, Marcus Aurelius had to maintain his composure in the face of all difficulties. Just think about it, an emperor sitting on a throne, wielding a sword, contemplating what it means to live virtuously. In this work, we see his spiritual battles, the inner struggles he faced, and his efforts to achieve peace. Yes, dear friends, Meditations is not just a philosophical book, it is a work that touches the human side of Marcus Aurelius. In this piece, the wise words echoing life is short, be virtuous resonate in our ears like a lasting echo through the ages. Each line is a clue to his life, a lesson in its own right. This work serves as a guide for individuals to gain mastery over their will and to live virtuously without worrying about what others think. Friends, just think. Marcus Aurelius probably never imagined that his thoughts would have such a powerful impact back then. However, over time, Meditations became a guiding light not just for Stoic philosophers, but for ordinary people as well. Emperors, leaders, warriors, writers, they all found something in these lines that resonated with their own lives. Because what Marcus Aurelius wrote was universal, it spoke to the essence of being human. Control your fears, master your passions, be virtuous. This simple yet profound message continues to echo through the ages. And dear friends, this legacy speaks not only to the people of his time, but also to us today. We live in a world filled with uncertainty, lost in the complexities of life. Yet Marcus Aurelius's simple yet profound thoughts guide us as well. No matter what, there are many things in life we cannot control, however. Controlling our reactions and finding our inner peace is within our reach. Just like Marcus Aurelius did. What a great legacy this is, my friends. Through Meditations, Marcus Aurelius continues to touch our hearts, transcending the stone walls of Rome, imperial armies, and the halls of the Senate. He was not just an emperor, but also a sage. And this sage, by sharing the peace he found in his inner world, perhaps achieved his greatest victory, transcending time. So, my friends, Meditations is such a work, a philosophical legacy that transcends centuries and ages. Entering Marcus Aurelius's world and diving into these profound thoughts reminds us once again what it means to be human. My dear friends, now we've come to the saddest yet unavoidable part of our story, the death of Marcus Aurelius. No matter how great a philosopher or how powerful an emperor he was, death comes knocking on everyone's door. Throughout his life, Marcus Aurelius sought to understand death. He accepted it, reflected on it, and as a Stoic philosopher, he was prepared for it. But friends, the death of a wise emperor affects not just his own life, but an entire empire. Marcus Aurelius passed away in 180 AD at the age of 58. While dealing with the Germanic tribes he fought on the northern front, he fell seriously ill. His body could no longer bear the burdens of war and stress. Tragically, in his final years, he couldn't find the peace he so desperately needed. Still, he maintained his mental composure and fulfilled his duties until his last breath. Friends, he understood that death was not just an end for him, but a transition. With his passing, not only did an emperor leave us, but an entire era came to a close. But dear friends, what did Marcus Aurelius's death mean for the Roman Empire? This is where things take a turn. Rome had entered a difficult period. His son Commodus, who ascended the throne after him, took the empire in a completely different direction instead of continuing his father's legacy. Marcus Aurelius's wise governance, sense of justice, and understanding of virtue were replaced by Commodus's irresponsible and despotic rule. Friends, unfortunately, this new era failed to maintain the order that Marcus had established. Unlike his father, Commodus began to govern the empire solely for his own pleasures and thirst for power. With Marcus Aurelius's death, the Roman Empire plunged into political and cultural turmoil. During his reign, there was virtuous leadership and a strong moral stance. However, under Commodus's rule, these virtues quickly faded. Trust among the people eroded, discipline within the army broke down, and the Senate's power gradually weakened. Marcus Aurelius had tried to keep his people in prosperity and order, but after his death, maintaining that balance in Rome became increasingly difficult. However, friends, Marcus Aurelius's death didn't just create a political vacuum, it also left deep marks on the cultural fabric of Rome. His philosophical ideas and Stoic approach continued to resonate, not just in his time but for centuries to come. Works like Meditations became a cornerstone of Rome's intellectual life. Yet, dear friends, after his death, the people of Rome experienced a kind of spiritual orphanhood. The loss of a wise emperor created not just a physical void, but a spiritual one as well. The people had to say goodbye to their deep-thinking, just, and patient emperor, who stood at the center of it all. And of course, with his death, the borders of Rome came under threat. The wars and defenses Marcus Aurelius had dedicated his life to became even more challenging in his absence. The Germanic tribes continued to push at the borders, and the Parthians were preparing to attack from the east. Rome was now weakened, and this weakness paved the way for the empire's future collapse. He showed that an emperor could win battles not just with soldiers but with wisdom as well. Unfortunately, that understanding was not carried on by his son Commodus. My friends, just think. The people of Rome mourned deeply after Marcus Aurelius's death, perhaps more than ever before. Because this was not just the loss of a ruler, it was also the loss of a guide. The love and respect the people had for him endured even after his passing. Monuments were erected in his honor throughout Rome, statues were made, and his wise words were passed from mouth to mouth. Marcus Aurelius secured an immortal place in the heart of Rome. His name echoed throughout the empire, and even though he was physically gone, his legacy and thoughts continued to live on forever in Rome's cultural and intellectual life. And dear friends, the traces of the Roman Empire's decline after Marcus Aurelius's death can be seen in the struggles he faced while he was alive. He fought with all his might to change the empire's fate, but after his death, everything slipped out of his control. Yet, his philosophy and legacy never left Rome. Dear friends, the death of Marcus Aurelius was the greatest sign that an era had come to an end. However, the thoughts he left behind continue to remind us of how valuable virtue, justice, and a life filled with wisdom are. He was not just an emperor, he was a sage who illuminated all ages. And even after his death, that light never extinguished. My dear friends, at this point it's time to witness the eternal legacy of a shining star in the dusty pages of history, Marcus Aurelius. His story is not just about the life of an emperor, but a saga that tells of a philosopher's thoughts and the legacy of a virtuous leader. Known as the Philosopher King of Rome, Marcus Aurelius is one of the most significant figures, not only of his time but throughout human history. Even today, his thoughts continue to influence us and shape our lives. Marcus Aurelius was not just a warrior but also a profound thinker and a wise man searching for the meaning of life. As a philosopher king during the peak of the Roman Empire, he skillfully blended philosophy and governance, becoming both a political and spiritual authority. His leadership served as a beacon of justice and virtue for his people. Friends, Marcus was a figure who touched the lives of every Roman citizen. His influence spanned from the battlefields to the palace and into the realm of thought. And dear friends, the Stoic philosophy that Marcus Aurelius embraced throughout his life was not just a personal journey but a deep understanding of the virtues a society needs. The patience, self-discipline, and inner peace we find in his thoughts became a guiding light for the Roman people during tough times. In the face of wars, economic hardships, and natural disasters, Marcus's philosophical approach united the people and served as a source of encouragement. Whether they were warriors, farmers, or merchants, everyone found a piece of his teachings relevant to their lives. One of Marcus Aurelius's most important works, Meditations, presents one of the finest examples of his life philosophy and thoughts. This work addresses not only the inner musings of an emperor, but also the shared struggles of all humanity. The book is the result of a profound process of personal inquiry and self-reflection. Each page contains valuable insights about the transient nature of life, the challenges we face as humans, and how we should respond to those challenges. My friends, this work continues to inspire not just people from ancient times, but also those in the modern world. Finding inner peace and learning how to discover ourselves even amidst chaos, this is Marcus's greatest gift to us. The impact of Marcus Aurelius extends beyond the borders of Rome. It resonates all around the world. His philosophy left a deep mark on the thinkers and leaders of subsequent generations. From the Renaissance to modern times, his ideas have become cornerstones of philosophical movements. Even today, we turn to Marcus's teachings for guidance on coping with stress, self-discipline, self-understanding, and living a virtuous life. His insights shine a light on the universal problems of humanity. Dear friends, the philosophical legacy of Marcus Aurelius is filled with answers to existential questions we all face. Accepting the transitory nature of life, finding courage in the face of challenges, and showing compassion to others are at the heart of his teachings. These ideas not only highlight the universality of human values, but also encourage every individual to strive to be a better person. Today, Marcus Aurelius's thoughts help individuals and societies tackle numerous challenges. His legacy is not just a part of the past, but a roadmap for the future. And dear friends, remember that Marcus Aurelius's eternal legacy continues to guide us in our search for meaning in life. The Philosopher King may not be physically present among us, but he lives on through his thoughts and teachings. It is our duty to follow his light, lead a virtuous life, and draw inspiration from Marcus's philosophical legacy to navigate every challenge we encounter. In this way, while the Philosopher King of Rome secures his place in history forever, we can also find true meaning in our lives by walking in his footsteps. My dear friends, we have now reached the end of this incredible journey. But remember, every ending is a new beginning. The life of Marcus Aurelius contains much more than just the story of an emperor. It's a saga filled with profound and universal lessons about the existence of humanity. Let's take a moment to revisit the life and teachings of this great philosopher and remember the valuable lessons he has left us. Marcus Aurelius's life was shaped by many challenges and wars. However, the way he faced these difficulties offers guidance for each of us in our own vital struggles. One of the key values that stands out in his thoughts is the acceptance of life's transience. My dear friends, we all face challenges that life brings us: loss of loved ones, fleeting happiness, and the uncertainties of existence. It is at this point that Marcus's teachings of Stoicism come into play. What matters is not how we lose ourselves, but how we find ourselves again. Marcus was a leader who managed to see every moment of his life as a lesson. This perspective shows us how we should respond to the challenges we face in our own lives. In a life filled with difficulties, maintaining inner peace and tranquility may be our most important skill. As a wise man who illuminated his era, Marcus showed us ways to find this inner balance. Another important lesson is that humans are inherently social beings. Marcus Aurelius not only thought of his own interests, but also prioritized the welfare of his people. The philosophy of Stoicism encourages individuals to transcend themselves to serve society. In this context, each of us needs to understand the importance of helping others and building a community in our lives. Remember, not only individual successes but also social solidarity are equally valuable. Marcus Aurelius's philosophical thoughts emphasize the importance of living virtuously, while also establishing relationships based on human dignity and mutual respect. As a leader, he displayed governance filled with courage and compassion. Even when faced with difficult decisions, he never neglected to uphold the highest values of humanity. This serves as an important example of what a leader should be. Whenever we take on a leadership role, big or small, we can use Marcus's philosophies as our guide. Dear friends, the legacy of Marcus Aurelius calls out to all of us, transcending time and space. His story is not only that of an emperor but also that of a human, a leader, and a thinker. Standing tall in the face of life's challenges, finding inner peace, and being sensitive to others, these are the valuable lessons this Philosopher King has taught us. Perhaps Marcus's most important advice is to discover the potential that exists within each of us. It's about viewing every moment life offers us as a lesson and internalizing these lessons. And friends, as we move forward with what we've learned on this journey, let's integrate Marcus Aurelius's philosophies into our lives to become more virtuous individuals. His life and thoughts are not just part of the past, they serve as a compass for today and the future. Remember, true wisdom is based on learning, growing, and sharing the common values of humanity. Finally, I'd like to leave you with a thought: as humanity, we are stronger together. The wisdom within each of us is a part of a whole. So, dear friends, by perceiving the story of Marcus Aurelius as a whole, we can benefit from this wisdom in our lives. Today and every day, by reflecting his philosophies in our lives, we can beautify not only our own lives but also the world around us.